The scream tore from my throat before I could stop it, raw and jagged, as Officer Marcus Reed's baton lifted my dress, exposing me to the crowd in Zilker Park. I was mid-broadcast, hosting Austin Unheard, my community radio show, the microphone clipped to my turquoise dress, a gift from my mother, Mayor Lena Coleman, catching every word. At 32, I'd built my life around amplifying black voices, giving Austin's marginalized a platform, but in that moment, my own voice was stolen. Reed's smirk was a blade, his blue eyes glinting with a malice I'd seen too often as a black woman. "Let's see what you're hiding, radio star," he drawled, his voice smooth but venomous, the baton flicking my skirt high enough to show my underwear to the dozens watching. My hands scrambled to cover myself, shame burning my cheeks, rage pounding in my chest. Caleb Dunn, his younger partner, stood frozen, his nervous chuckle a betrayal as sharp as Reed's act. This wasn't just an assault. It was a deliberate attempt to strip me of dignity, to reduce me to nothing in a park where I'd always felt free. I stumbled back, the microphone still live, broadcasting my gasp to thousands. "You're a jerk," I spat, my voice trembling but fierce, tears stinging my eyes. Reed laughed, a polished, chilling sound, like he was performing for an audience he thought he owned. I knew men like him, charismatic, powerful, hiding hate behind a badge. I'd heard whispers about Reed, a cop with a trail of complaints, his charm disarming superiors but not the black folks he targeted. Something in his eyes told me this was personal, like he'd been waiting to break someone like me. My mind raced, replaying the stories I'd shared on my show, survivors of police harassment, their pain now mine. I wasn't just Zara Coleman, radio host and mayor's daughter. I was every black woman who'd ever been made to feel small, and I wouldn't let him win. Jaden Gwynn, my 17-year-old intern, stood nearby, her phone shaking as she recorded. Her dark eyes were wide with fear, but she didn't look away, her courage a lifeline. "Miss Zara, I'm getting this," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd's murmurs. People were gathering now, students, families, a food truck vendor, all drawn by the commotion, some filming, others shouting. "That's assault," a woman yelled, her voice sharp with anger. Pastor Eli Brooks, my mentor from church, pushed through, his gray hair catching the sunlight, his face etched with fury. "Zara, you okay?" he called, his presence grounding me. I nodded, though my legs felt like they might give out. I'd known Eli since I was a kid, his sermons about justice shaping my work. Now, he was here, a witness to my fight. "You don't know who I am," I said to Reed, my words a blade, cutting through his smirk. He stepped closer, too close, his breath hot with contempt. "I know exactly who you are, girl." Another loudmouth thinking she's special. Dunn shifted, his hands twitching, like he wanted to stop this but couldn't. I saw the crack in Reed's facade, a flicker of something deeper, not just duty but a personal grudge. I'd later learn he blamed black communities for a tragedy in his past, a loss that twisted his grief into prejudice, but in that moment, all I saw was his need to dominate. My heart hammered, but I stood taller, refusing to shrink. I grabbed my phone, the microphone still broadcasting my words. "I'm calling my mother," I said, my voice steady now, a storm gathering strength. My mother's voice answered, sharp and fierce. "Zara, what's happening?" I told her everything, Reed's baton, Dunn's silence, the crowd watching my humiliation. Her silence was a thunderclap, her rage a force I could feel through the phone. "Stay put," she said. "I'm on my way." I hung up, my eyes locked on Reed, who rolled his eyes like I was a child throwing a fit. But the crowd was growing, their phones raised like torches, their voices a chorus of defiance. "You're on Instagram Live," a student shouted. Jade's video was spreading, my pain going viral, and I felt a shift, the power wasn't Reed's anymore. It was mine, ours, the crowd's. Reed's charm faltered, his smirk twitching as he sensed the tide turning. "Disperse, now," he barked, but no one listened. A vendor called out, "We saw what you did, man." Eli stepped beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone, Zara," he said, his voice a balm to my raw nerves. I thought of my radio listeners, the thousands who'd heard my scream, who were now texting, tweeting, rallying. Jade approached, her face pale but determined. "It's at 1 million views, Miss Zara," she said, her voice shaking with pride. I hugged her, gratitude flooding me. She was young, but her bravery was rewriting this moment. The drama escalated as Reed stepped closer, his baton tapping his palm, his eyes narrowing. "You think your mama's gonna save you?" he sneered, his voice low, dangerous. Dunn whispered, "Marcus, maybe we should go," but Reed ignored him, his focus on me, like I was a trophy he needed to claim. My pulse spiked, fear mingling with fury. I'd faced microaggressions, slurs, but this was different, raw, public, personal. Yet the crowd's support, Eli's strength, Jade's courage held me up. I spoke into the microphone, my voice clear, defiant. "You assaulted me, Officer Reed. You laughed. But the world sees you now." An SUV screeched to a stop, doors slamming. My mother, Mayor Lena Coleman, stepped out, her suit sharp, her eyes blazing with a mother's wrath. The crowd parted, phones capturing her stride. Reed's face paled, but he didn't back down. He raised his baton, pointing it at me, his voice a snarl. "This isn't over, radio girl." My mother's shout cut through the air. "Step away from my daughter." But Reed took another step, his intent clear, his malice a storm about to break. My breath caught, the crowd gasping, Jade's camera still rolling, and I braced for what came next, my heart screaming one truth: I would not be silenced. My mother's shout still echoed in my ears as Officer Marcus Reed's baton hovered inches from my chest, his threat hanging like a storm cloud over Zilker Park. The crowd's gasps were a pulse, their phones capturing every second of his defiance, but I stood firm, my turquoise dress a banner of resilience. I was Zara Coleman, host of Austin Unheard, daughter of Mayor Lena Coleman, and no man's badge could silence me. Reed's eyes burned with a hatred I couldn't fully grasp, a personal vendetta that went beyond his uniform. My mother stormed forward, her presence a force that parted the crowd, but before she could reach me, Jade Nguyen's voice cut through the tension. "It's at 3 million views, Miss Zara," she called, her phone still recording, her teenage courage a spark igniting the city. Reed froze, his baton lowering slightly, as if the weight of those millions finally registered. The power wasn't his anymore, it was ours, and I felt it surge through me like a river breaking free. The park thrummed with life now, hundreds gathering, students from UT Austin, families from the nearby food trucks, elders leaning on canes, all drawn by the viral video Jade had posted. My scream, broadcast live on my radio show, had reached thousands, and now their anger was a chorus. A young black man in a hoodie raised a sign, "Protect Zara, protect us all." A Latina mother shouted, "No more badges breaking our daughters." I clutched my phone, my mother's words replaying, "Stay put. I'm on my way." She was here now, flanked by aides, her eyes locked on Reed, who stepped back, his charm cracking under the crowd's gaze. Caleb Dunn, his partner, mumbled something, his face pale, his cowardice a shadow beside Reed's malice. I saw Dunn's hands shake, his loyalty to Reed wavering, but he said nothing, his silence as damning as Reed's act. Pastor Eli Brooks stood beside me, his hand steady on my arm, his voice low. "You're carrying a city's pain, Zara, but you're not alone." His words anchored me, reminding me of the Sundays I'd spent in his church, learning that justice wasn't just a dream but a fight. I nodded, tears brimming but refusing to fall. The shame of Reed's assault still clung to me, a heat that flushed my skin, but the crowd support was stitching my spirit back together. A woman approached, her hands trembling as she offered a piece of fabric. "For a quilt," she said softly. "We're sewing one for you, for all the women hurt like this." Her words hit me hard, a vision of survivors' stories woven into something tangible, something healing. I took the fabric, my fingers brushing hers, and whispered, "Thank you." The quilt project, born in that moment, was a new thread in Austen's fight, a way to honor pain and resilience. My mother reached me, her embrace fierce, her voice a vow. "They'll answer for this, Zara." She turned to the crowd, her mayor's authority amplified by a mother's rage. "This city will not tolerate officers who violate our daughters," she declared, her words broadcast live as news vans arrived. "We're auditing every complaint, every badge, starting now." The crowd roared, a sound that shook the earth, and I felt pride swell in my chest. My mother wasn't just a politician. She was a black woman who'd clawed her way to power, and now she was wielding it for me, for us. Deputy Chief Vanessa Monroe, a black woman with a reputation for cutting through corruption, stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "Officers Reed and Dunn, you're suspended. Surrender your badges." Reed's face darkened, but he complied, his movements slow, deliberate, like he was plotting his next move. Dunn handed over his badge, his head bowed, his shame palpable. The crowd's energy shifted as a local artist, Sophia, began sketching a mural on a nearby wall, her spray cans hissing with purpose. "This is for Zara," she called, inviting others to join. A teen grabbed a can, painting "Justice Now" in bold red. The mural was more than art, it was a declaration, a canvas where Austen could shout its truth. I watched, my heart torn between the trauma of Reed's baton and the hope of this moment. I thought of my radio listeners, the thousands who'd heard my scream, who were now organizing vigils, tweeting hashtags like #JusticeForZara. Jade, still filming, approached me, her voice steady despite her youth. "People are protesting in Dallas, Miss Zara. Your voice is everywhere." I hugged her, her bravery a mirror to my own. She was my intern, but today, she was my sister in this fight. My thoughts drifted to Reed, to the darkness in his eyes. I'd heard rumors about him. A cop who'd lost his brother years ago, a tragedy he twisted into blame against black communities, his grief curdling into prejudice. It didn't excuse him, but it explained the venom, the way he'd targeted me, a black woman with a platform. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the crowd. A group of my radio show listeners, led by a poet named Malik, organized a spoken-word vigil, their voices rising under the park's oaks. "They tried to silence Zara," Malik recited, "but her truth burns like fire." The words wrapped around me, easing the ache of that moment when my dress was lifted, when I felt like nothing. I wasn't nothing, I was a voice, and Austen was amplifying it. My mother pulled me aside, her eyes searching mine. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said, her voice soft but fierce. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "I'm not just carrying it, Mama. I'm turning it into something." The quilt project, the mural, the vigil, they were sparks of a movement, and I was their heart. I thought of the women who'd called into my show, sharing stories of harassment, their voices trembling but unbroken. This wasn't just about me, it was about them, about every black woman told to shrink. I spoke to the crowd, my microphone still live. Officer Reed thought he could break me, but he broke his own shield. "You're my shield now." The crowd cheered, their voices a wave that drowned out the memory of Reed's smirk. Sophia's mural grew, vibrant with turquoise and gold, depicting my silhouette against a rising sun, surrounded by faces of survivors. Malik's vigil lit candles, their glow a testament to unity. I touched the mural, my fingers tracing a painted word, "Unheard." It was my show's name, but now it was a promise, to never let our stories fade. My mother announced a citywide initiative, funding for community projects like the quilt and mural, and a task force to reform policing. For 25 to 55-year-olds, this was a call to action, a reminder that their voices, on air, on canvas, in the streets, could shift the world. I thought of Jade, her camera still rolling, capturing this moment for millions. Her courage, Eli's wisdom, my mother's power, they were my strength. As night fell, the park glowed with candlelight, the vigil's poetry echoing online. I stood by the mural, my turquoise dress a symbol of defiance, not shame. Reed was gone, his badge stripped, but I knew he wasn't finished. His final threat, "This isn't over," lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. Yet the crowd's roar, the quilt's promise, the mural's truth held me up. I was Zara Coleman, and my voice was a light no one could dim. The fight was just beginning, and Austin was ready to burn brighter than ever. The courtroom air was thick with anticipation, a weight that pressed against my chest as I took the witness stand, my black blazer a shield against the memories clawing at me. I was Zara Coleman, 32, host of Austin Unheard, daughter of Mayor Lena Coleman, but today, I was every black woman who'd ever been violated and told to stay quiet. Across the aisle, Officer Marcus Reed sat, his once charismatic smirk replaced by a hollow scowl, his eyes avoiding mine like he knew the truth I carried. Caleb Dunn, his younger partner, slouched beside him, his face pale, guilt etched in every line. The charges, assault, sexual battery, misconduct, and a new Austin statute against racialized public humiliation, hung like a storm ready to break. Attorney Jordan Ellis, a black woman whose legal precision was legendary, paced before the jury, her voice ablade. "This isn't about one officer's mistake," she said, her eyes fierce. "It's about a system that let Marcus Reed believe he could strip Zara Coleman's dignity and walk away because she was black." Her words landed hard, and I felt the crowd, reporters, activists, my radio listeners, lean forward, their belief in me a lifeline. I gripped the stand, my heart pounding as Jordan turned to me. "Zara, tell us what happened in Zilker Park." My voice trembled at first, but I steadied it, recounting the moment Reed's baton lifted my turquoise dress, exposing me on live radio, his laughter a knife to my soul. "He called me girl, like I was nothing," I said, my eyes locked on Reed. Dunn watched, laughing, doing nothing. They thought I'd shrink, but I spoke. The courtroom was silent, the weight of my words a mirror to the millions who'd seen Jade Nguyen's viral video, now at 10 million views. Jade, my 17-year-old intern, sat in the gallery, her dark eyes bright with courage. She'd testified earlier, her voice shaking as she described filming Reed's assault, her phone capturing my scream. "I had to show the truth," she'd said, and I felt pride swell for her, a teenager who'd faced fear to stand with me. Jordan's questions peeled back Reed's facade, revealing a man whose prejudice wasn't just professional but personal. Unsealed files, exposed by my mother's citywide audit, showed Reed's history, for complaints of harassment, all against black women, buried by union deals. Dunn had 2 use of force reports, both involving young people of color, his complicity a pattern. Jordan held up the files, her voice thunderous. "How many more Zaras were silenced before this?" she demanded. Reed shifted, his jaw tight, and I saw it again, that flicker of something deeper, a grudge rooted in his past. I'd learned he'd lost his brother to violence years ago, a tragedy he'd wrongly blamed on black communities, his grief twisted into a vendetta that landed on me, a black woman with a voice. It didn't absolve him, but it made his malice human, and that scared me more. It wasn't just a badge, it was a man choosing hate. My testimony wasn't just about that day, it was about every day I'd navigated as a black woman, from microaggressions on air to the fear of walking alone. "I built Austin Unheard to lift voices like mine," I said, my voice rising. Reed tried to silence me, but he only made me louder. The jury leaned in, their faces a mix of empathy and outrage, and I felt the crowd support, Pastor Eli Brooks nodding from the back, my mother's fierce gaze from the front row. Eli had mentored me since I was a girl, his belief in justice shaping my fight. My mother, a mayor who'd battled racism to lead Austin, sat proud but pained, her reforms now a shield for me. I announced Voices Unsilenced, a platform I'd launched through my radio show for survivors to share stories anonymously. "No one should carry this shame alone," I said, and the gallery murmured, some wiping tears. The platform had hundreds of submissions already, each story a crack in the system's silence. Jade's testimony had shifted the trial's tide, her video undeniable proof. She'd faced Reed's lawyer, who tried to paint her as a reckless teen chasing clout, but her quiet strength, "I filmed because it was wrong," silenced him. I saw her growth, from a shy intern to an advocate, and vowed to mentor her further. The judge, Honorable Clara Rios, a Latina known for dismantling police cover-ups, let Jordan's arguments resonate, her gavel a promise of fairness. Outside, protesters chanted my name, their turquoise armbands a nod to my dress, their signs demanding end badge abuse. I thought of the quilt project from the park, now growing with patches from survivors across Texas, a tapestry of pain and power. My radio listeners had started truth circles, public forums where people shared stories of harassment, their voices echoing mine. The drama peaked as Reed took the stand, his charm a weak mask. "I was ensuring park safety," he lied, his voice flat. Jordan pounced. "Did safety require lifting Zara's dress?" Laughing as she screamed. Reed faltered, his eyes darting to Dunn, who looked away, his loyalty crumbling. I saw Dunn's insecurity, his need for Reed's approval, and pitied him, but pity didn't erase his guilt. Jordan's final question was a dagger. "Did you target Zara because she was black?" Reed's silence was louder than any answer, and I felt a release, not joy, but vindication. The jury's faces hardened, and I knew they saw him for what he was, a man who'd chosen hate over duty. When the jury returned, their verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, gasps turning to cheers, and I exhaled, the weight of that day in Zilker Park lifting slightly. Reed's shoulders slumped, Dunn's head dropped, tears streaming, but I stayed still, my heart a mix of relief and resolve. Jordan approached, her hand on mine. "You did this, Zara," she whispered. I nodded, thinking of Voices Unsilenced, now a national platform with thousands of stories, each one a step toward healing. My mother hugged me, her voice thick. "You're my hero." Eli prayed softly, his words a blessing. Jade ran to me, her smile fierce. "We won, Miss Zara," she said, and I saw her future, an activist, a leader. For 25 to 55-year-olds, this was a triumph, a reminder that truth could break chains. The quilt, the truth circles, the platform. They were proof that one voice could spark a chorus. Yet I knew Reed's shadow lingered, his prejudice a symptom of a system still broken. As I left the courtroom, protesters cheered, their turquoise armbands a sea of solidarity. I spoke to them, my voice steady. "This isn't just my win, it's ours. Keep speaking, keep fighting." The crowd roared, and I felt their strength, my trauma still raw but now a weapon. Voices Unsilenced was growing, and I was its heart, ready to face the storm's next wave. The courtroom's echo of "guilty" still rang in my ears as I stood in Zilker Park, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the mural that now bore my silhouette. I was Zara Coleman, 32, host of Austin Unheard, a black woman who turned a moment of violation into a movement, but the weight of that day, when Officer Marcus Reed's baton stole my dignity, hadn't fully lifted. The sentencing had been swift. Reed got 8 years, no parole for 5, his badge and pension stripped, his name forever marked in a national database of disgraced officers. Caleb Dunn, his silent accomplice, received 3 years and a lifetime ban from public service, his cowardice a lesson in itself. Yet justice wasn't just their punishment, it was what we built from the ashes, and today, Austin was rising. The mural, vibrant with turquoise and gold, depicted me alongside other survivors, painted by hundreds. Students, elders, strangers turned family. As I touched its surface, my fingers tracing the word "unheard," I felt a surge of pride, not just for myself but for a city that refused to look away. The park buzzed with life, thousands gathered for the mural's unveiling, a festival of music, food trucks, and voices that had once been silenced. My mother, Mayor Lena Coleman, stood beside me, her eyes bright with a mother's love and a leader's resolve. She'd signed an executive order that morning, a 6-point plan to reshape Austin's police, civilian oversight boards with subpoena power, mandatory de-escalation training, and funding for community initiatives like my Voices Unsilenced platform. "This is your legacy, Zara," she whispered, her hand squeezing mine. I nodded, but my thoughts drifted to the quilt project, now a sprawling tapestry displayed nearby, each patch a survivor's story stitched with hope. A woman had given me the first piece after Reed's assault, and now hundreds had contributed, their messages, "We stand, no more silence," a testament to collective healing. I'd added my own patch, a turquoise square with the word, "Speak," and seeing it among others eased the ache of my trauma. Pastor Eli Brooks approached, his gray hair catching the sunlight, his smile warm but heavy with the weight of decades fighting injustice. "You've given us a new language, Zara," he said, gesturing to the crowd. Eli had been my mentor since childhood, his church a haven where I'd learned to dream beyond the barriers racism set. Now, he was leading truth circles, public forums where survivors shared stories, their voices amplified by my radio show. I hugged him, gratitude swelling for his steady presence. Jaden Gwynn, my 17-year-old intern, ran up, her face glowing with excitement. "Miss Zara, the platform's got 5,000 stories now," she said, her phone buzzing with notifications. Jade had grown from a shy teenager to a fierce advocate, her viral video of Reed's assault sparking this movement. I'd launched a mentorship program through Austin Unheard, pairing teens like her with activists to learn civic engagement, and Jade was its first star, drafting policy proposals for City Hall. The festival's energy was electric, a band playing soulful jazz as kids painted mini murals on canvas squares. I thought of Reed, now behind bars, his prejudice exposed as a symptom of a system that had protected him too long. My mother's audit had uncovered dozens of buried complaints, leading to more suspensions, and Deputy Chief Vanessa Monroe, a black woman who'd stripped Reed's badge, was overseeing the reforms. "We're cleaning house," she'd told me, her eyes fierce. I admired her, a reformer who'd faced her own battles in a male-dominated force, and her work gave me hope. Yet I couldn't shake Reed's final words, "This isn't over," a shadow that lingered in my nightmares, where his smirk still mocked me. I pushed the fear aside, focusing on the crowd, their turquoise armbands a sea of solidarity, their chants a vow to keep fighting. Sophia, the artist behind the mural, took the stage, her voice ringing out. "This mural isn't just paint. It's our truth, our power." The crowd cheered as she unveiled the full artwork, my silhouette framed by a rising sun, surrounded by faces of survivors, their eyes bold and unyielding. I spoke next, my microphone a familiar comfort. "They tried to break me, but you rebuilt me," I said, my voice cracking with emotion. "This mural, this quilt, your voices, they're our new narrative." The crowd roared, and I felt their strength, a city united not by pain but by purpose. Malik, a poet from my radio show, performed a piece, his words, "Zara's scream woke a sleeping city," igniting cheers. His Truth Circle had drawn hundreds, their stories now part of Voices Unsilenced, which I'd expanded into a national platform, funded by my mother's initiative. Jade tugged my sleeve, her eyes bright. "I wrote a policy for your mentorship program," she said, handing me a draft. It proposed youth-led police oversight panels, and I marveled at her vision, promising to present it to City Hall. The mentorship program was my heart's work, training teens to advocate for change, and seeing Jade thrive healed parts of me Reed had wounded. I thought of Dunn, whose silence had enabled Reed, and wondered if he'd ever face his guilt. His sentencing included restorative justice, working under survivors' leadership, and I hoped it would change him, though I doubted it could erase his complicity. My trauma still surfaced, a tightness in my chest when I saw police, but the festival's joy, kids dancing, elders sharing stories, grounded me. My mother announced a national coalition of mayors adopting Austin's reforms, amplifying our fight. "Zara's courage is a blueprint," she said, and I felt a weight. Not of burden, but of responsibility. For 25 to 55-year-olds, this was a call to action, proof that one woman's stand could shift systems. The quilt display drew crowds, people touching patches with reverence, some adding their own. A survivor, a woman in her 50s, approached me, her voice soft. "Your platform gave me the courage to tell my story," she said. I hugged her, tears falling, our shared pain a bond stronger than words. The festival closed with a candlelit vigil, Malik's poetry blending with jazz, the mural glowing under floodlights. I stood by it, my turquoise dress a symbol of defiance, not shame. As the crowd dispersed, I lingered, my mother's arm around me. "You've changed, Austin," she said, her voice thick. I nodded, but my thoughts were on the future. Reed's shadow, the system's rot, the stories still untold, they were battles yet to come. Jade's policy, the quilt's growth, the platform's reach. They were weapons in that fight. I looked at the mural, my silhouette a promise to keep speaking, and felt a fire in my soul. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning, and I was ready to lead Austin into a brighter dawn. I stood before the bench in Zilker Park, its weathered stone no longer a scar but a monument to the day I found my unbreakable voice. That moment, when Officer Marcus Reed's baton lifted my turquoise dress, exposing me on live radio, had once shattered me, but now, at 32, I was Zara Coleman, host of Austin Unheard, a black woman who'd woven that pain into a tapestry of change. I wore a white linen dress, its crisp fabric a symbol of renewal, and sat deliberately, my heart steady despite the echoes of that scream. The morning sun warmed my skin, and I felt the presence of my mother, Mayor Lena Coleman, approaching, her eyes a mirror of pride and resilience. A crowd began to gather, not a mob, but a family, many in turquoise armbands, their signs proclaiming, "Zara's voice lives." This wasn't a protest. It was a reclamation, a vow that no black woman would be silenced again in Austin's heart. The park pulsed with quiet strength, the mural from the festival now a beacon, its turquoise and gold hues framing my silhouette beside other survivors, painted by hands that had held me up. I touched the bench, my fingers grazing its rough edges, and let the memories flood in, Reed's chilling smirk, Caleb Dunn's nervous chuckle, the crowd's gasps as my dignity was stripped. The trauma lingered, a shadow in my dreams where Reed's voice still taunted, but it had transformed into a fire that fueled my purpose. My mother sat beside me, her hand gentle. "You've rebuilt this city, Zara," she said, her voice thick with love. I smiled, thinking of Voices Unsilenced, my platform now hosting 20,000 stories from survivors across America, each one a crack in the wall of silence. My mentorship program, training teens like Jade and Gwyn to lead, had reached 40 cities, their policies, like Jade's youth oversight panels, shaping a new future. Jade bounded over, her 17-year-old energy a spark, her dark eyes gleaming. "Miss Zara, the day of dignity is ready," she said, pointing to the thousands gathering, families, activists, lawmakers, here for Austin's first annual event celebrating resilience. Jade handed me a poem, The Bench Reborn, its lines bold. Zara sat, and the world rose. I hugged her, my pride for her fierce advocacy swelling. Her viral video of Reed's assault, now at 15 million views, had ignited this movement, and her growth from shy intern to policy leader was my greatest reward. Pastor Eli Brooks stood nearby, his gray hair aglow, his smile a blessing. "You've sown seeds that'll outlive us, Zara," he said. Eli's Truth Circles, where survivors shared stories on my radio show, had become a national movement, and his mentorship had guided me from a dreamer to a doer. A man approached, his hands trembling as he offered a quilt patch. "My sister was harassed by police," he said softly. "Your platform gave her courage to speak." The patch, turquoise with "We Heal," joined thousands in the survivor's quilt, now a global exhibit. I'd stitched my own, unsilenced, in gold, and seeing it among others eased the ache of that day. I thanked him, our shared glance a promise to keep fighting. My mother announced a national survivor fund, fueled by Austin's budget, and a DOJ probe into police misconduct, our reforms a model for cities like Seattle and Miami. For 25 to 55-year-olds, this was a rallying cry, proof that one voice could shift a nation's soul. I rose to speak, my microphone a trusted ally, the crowd's eyes a canvas for my truth. This bench was where they tried to break me, I said, my voice steady, resonant. But you, your stories, your quilt, your fight, made it a sanctuary. The crowd cheered, their turquoise armbands a wave of unity, and I shared a memoir excerpt, my words raw, the bench didn't hold my shame, it held my power, and I give that to you. The trauma loosened its grip, not erased but reshaped into a tool for change. Malik, my poet friend, performed, his verse, Zara's scream split the sky, sparking roars. The Day of Dignity unfolded with poets, music, and policy talks, lawmakers vowing to spread Austin's reforms. I thought of Reed, imprisoned, his prejudice a wound he'd chosen to fester, rooted in a tragedy he'd twisted into hate. Dunn, in restorative justice, might learn, but my focus was here, with Jade, leading a youth panel, with Eli, praying for peace, with my mother, her reforms a shield. A girl, maybe 10, gave me a drawing of a bench under a sun, labeled Zara's home. You made it safe, she said, and I knelt, tears falling. You make it safe, too, I replied, her grin a spark for tomorrow. The vigil closed with candles glowing, the quilt beside the mural, a testament to our strength. As the crowd thinned, I sat on the bench again, my mother beside me, Jade and Eli close. I reflected on my journey, from a radio host amplifying others to a survivor who'd sparked a revolution. I'd learned that dignity isn't given, it's claimed, forged in the fire of speaking truth. I'd learned that pain, though heavy, can birth purpose when shared with a community that listens. I'd learned that racism, though systemic, crumbles when voices unite, quilt-like, into something unbreakable. My trauma was a scar, but scars tell stories, and mine was one of triumph. I looked at the mural, my silhouette eternal, and felt peace, not an end, but a beginning. I turned to the crowd, my voice soft but clear. If you were in a similar situation, with a public violation by those meant to protect, with a platform to speak but a world ready to doubt, how would you approach it to achieve the best possible outcome? I paused, letting the question linger, inviting them to imagine their own courage, their own bench to reclaim. The park was quiet now, the bench a throne, the Day of Dignity a vow. Voices unsilenced, the quilt, Jade's poem. They were our legacy, a light no one could dim. As the sun set, I stood, my white dress a flag of victory, Austin's heart beating with mine, ready for a dawn where every voice would soar.